So I'm the founder and the curator of Dadasphere, but this is not about me. Those of you who've been coming, you've seen that there's less and less of me in the program and on stage. And so now this is the only thing I will do. Well, we're going to sing happy birthday later. There's cake, so don't leave. So, Janet, good morning.
Good morning.
How nervous are you right now?
I'm so nervous.
When's the last time you were interviewed?
Not even that long ago, but I think it's a combination of this kind of space.
Okay.
Yeah, and just this kind of narrative, I guess, is what I'm nervous about.
Okay. So why media?
I think that's made you happy.
It has.
Like, let me ask a hard
I'm
question.
like, yes, open your heart, Janet.
Yeah.
So why media?
Media wasn't something that I was going to get into. I had wanted to be a criminal psychologist for some reason. And then it took my high school teacher, business teacher, who was also one of my mentors. She called me into her office and said, I think you should pursue media, because she'd been seeing me do verse speaking and debate and drama in high school. And she basically said, Charles, what do you want to do? I said, oh, psychology, I'm so fascinated by the human mind. She said, I think you have something in communication and media. It took her about an hour to convince me. And that's what made me say, okay, she may be seeing something. And then I pursued it.
You have such a distinctive voice. Like, it's the first time I met you, I was like, listen to that voice. Yes, it is deep, but it's also very distinct. Okay, so we've noticed with your career, there was a distinct shift at some point. First, you were a news anchor, and I'm not going to say you weren't deep, but something happened, and the needle, everything got deeper. Why? What happened?
Yes, I anchored for about 10 years. The travel show was, at the time, a very safe place for me, because I was 23 and I just come back to Kenya and I love travel. And I remember them trying to get me to get into the newsroom, and I completely refused to until Farida Karone, I think, saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And long story short, that's how I ended up. And so I hadn't fully embraced it. I was just kind of winging it. I guess got to a place where I embraced it and embraced me back. But I was going with a schedule. I didn't really, yes, I invested in the stories and in anchoring etc. But I never really invested emotionally in what was happening around me. Social issues have always been a passion point. But in terms of, rights in the workplace and that kind of thing, I would see it, but really didn't invest in it as I needed to have. But still, even before I talk about what led me to it, I can remember from as far back, for some reason, I was always drawn to very powerful people, but powerful women. Okay. And I wouldn't know then why, because I was pretty young, whether it was Oprah or Patricia Mira, who at the time was on radio, Caroline Mutoko, Martha Karua, Wangari Maathai, who's always been just one of my favorite human beings. I was very drawn to them. I even had printouts of some speeches on my wall in uni. So I have a dream, I had Gandhi's quotes, I had Wangari Maathai, but still I didn't really know why. And so I guess there was always something in me that was drawn to those who speak out,
and for others?
And for others, for some reason, but I wouldn't know why. But I think the thing that shifted was I was pregnant with my firstborn, Huru, who is now 3.5, and as you do, you document it. There's Instagram, etc. And I wasn't doing it for any reason other than this is my journal and this is my journey.
Okay.
But then a lot of hate speech came my way. There was a lot of, oh my God, you look so disgusting. Why are you on TV? So the first time I was like, that's odd, but maybe they're just having a bad day. And then it was just everything. Every time I do a bulletin with Hussein, and you've asked people a big question like, what do you think should be done about graft? Oh my God, you look so disgusting. Like,
forget corruption.
Forget corruption. Let's talk about your pregnancy and
your
how
waistline.
And your waistline. And it was, you shouldn't be on TV when you're pregnant. You're wearing a dress that's suffocating your baby. You're gross. I remember this one guy, it was like a tweet from his heart. I don't know who hurt him. But he was like, Janet she looks so gross. I can't stand looking at her on that screen. So usually I don't push back. When you're in the public eye, it's up to you how you choose to deal with the criticism and the hate.
They tell you you're supposed to let it roll off your back.
And usually,
like water off a duck's back or something.
That's very poetic for some. But this time I thought this is not so much about me. It's about a lot of the women who are probably hearing the same thing. And so I completely went dragon mode on them. I'm like, who are you to, what do you mean I'm too pregnant? What does too pregnant mean? In fact, I was like, explain too pregnant. I'm waiting. And I said, how did you come into the world? And I just said,
someone carried you.
And I remember telling this one guy, you just insulted your mother. I hope you know that. And so that's the time I just started hitting out, because I was getting it from all corners. What I didn't expect was for it to be a big-ish conversation, because it was on the trend, it was on Kiss in the morning, I didn't expect that. I just was like, but I don't know how to be quiet about this. And then women, many women, sending me DMs, stopping me in the street saying, thank you for normalizing this thing that we're usually penalized for.
I was about to say, were you getting the backlash that people feel towards pregnant women, but good manners dictates in an office, you can't tell me certain things. But now on Twitter, you know.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, so maybe that's what shifted. And I said, in as much as I've been seeing things wrong or hearing and letting people get away with it, I will no longer be quiet, because this is absolutely wrong, and it feeds into so many issues that a lot of women face, whether it's in the workplace or not. And so that's what, in as much as I've always been aware and passionate about people who speak, I'm like, maybe that's always been there, and this just needed to bring it out. So for me, that was the shift in terms of, until now, just not being able to keep quiet when there's certain issues around.
Did the backlash end once you had your son?
No, it happened again with my second born.
Okay.
5 months ago.
No, I don't even mean in public, like even within the office setting. Once now you are mom, how was the office?
No, I mean, in as much as I was a bit fortunate to be in an environment where my COO at the time was usually very understanding towards women who were going through transitions, men and women, but especially if you were pregnant or needed to go off and, get married, etc., she would be supportive of it. But there was one or two news editors that made very sexist comments. So I've come back, I've finished my maternity leave, and I'm showing up. I'm like, I'm here, I'm ready to work. And then you come back later for your bulletin, and there's somebody else who's prepping for your show, And so that made me feel like I'm being penalized for a very natural process. When it happened the second, third time, I had to raise it at a senior level and say, I'm not imagining that I'm being sidelined ever since I came back from maternity leave. What's going on?
Right.
It was handled, luckily. They still maintained this frosty relationship with me and continued in a meeting to say, ahead of the elections, disclaimer, no, if you're thinking about getting pregnant here, this is not the year,
Wow.
So a lot of us were like, and this person has been...
So in media, you're supposed to have your babies in between elections.
Or like much later.
We've done the first 100
maybe
days
have
of
in between elections.
Now I can get pregnant.
And then our elections never seem to end, because then you have one, and then August, then October. So when do you really have your baby? But because he's been in the industry for so long and gotten away with such, he's really crushed people. He was very sexist, very mean, and so people would cower. And so we got into it a bit. And I know two former colleagues of mine who resigned because of him.
Because of him?
Yeah, because of him, because one of them was a very present, intentional, passionate mom with a little toddler, and she would get a lot of flack for it. You think you're the first person to be a mother. You think they're the first person who can't travel.
And we've all had that, haven't we? You're just trying to pick your kids up, and it's like, you're the first one to do motherhood.
I'm like, what's the link? So, I said, why would you say something like that?
Right.
And you're just taking it too far. I said, that's unfair. It's completely unfair for you to say something like that, and it's sexist. And so there was a little bit of silence, a very frosty reception from him later. Then I went back again to the COO and I said, this guy has a problem, and he's creating this really toxic energy in the newsroom. A lot of women are not even feeling like they want to show up, because immediately they'll be overstepped for their male colleagues.
Right.
But I left shortly after, not really because of that, for many other reasons. But again, maybe previously it was something I would have just swept under the rug, but I'm like, you can't just come and tell people not to get pregnant,
So I was going to ask you this question later, but now that you brought it up, what do you think patriarchy has cost you?
First, I want to say the one thing I can say I'm lucky, and I think my sister is in the audience. Hi, Shaz. We have been lucky to be raised by a father who's not only present, but the kind of father who was never afraid to say, I love you, give you a hug, and allow you to be. Who do you want to be? What do you want to pursue? So I have to say that, and I know it's not a narrative that a lot of people share. So for the longest time, again, I didn't really see limitations in my life, because family was always, my older brother is a creative. I think we all are in our own way, but it was embraced. Is that what you want to do? Just make sure you work hard at it. Whatever path you wanted to choose, whatever country you wanted to travel to, that kind of thing. So it really came to my face, I think, as I was beginning to go up, getting to work, etc. So I would say then patriarchy later would cost, it costs us a seat at the table, because whatever is between your legs is what you're judged on, as opposed to what you can bring. It costs us the ability to want to change things, if we're going to use as an example, in the workplace. It costs us the opportunity to want to do more, because in their minds, a lot of the time, if it's an egotistical, mean, hard boss who happens to be male, then you feel like you should be where you are, and you don't really need to pursue it any further. The very few people who, like Farida, would tell us and call us in as female anchors and reporters and say, so what's your plan? It shouldn't end here.
In 5 years?
Yeah, in 5 years.
Right.
Are you looking at investing in a home? Are you looking at climbing up the ranks? What's your plan? So that was important for her to do.
Okay.
And she was doing that because she knew what she, some of the things she had been through. So it costs us a lot, but I think we have to be cognizant of the fact that the more you speak out, the more you try to climb up, you will be persecuted, but it's a better option than...
Do you feel like you were pushed out
of
your last job?
No, actually, for several reasons. One of them was burnout to an extent.
Okay.
I knew we were going into an election. I felt like I hadn't really taken time to even reflect on my career and reflect on my passions.
Okay.
And I really wasn't excited about the election. I felt like I like challenges and I like something new and fresh, and I'm like, it's the same narrative sort of thing. My son was 1.5 at the time, and honestly, he didn't really know who I was. He was more familiar with the nanny, that. And for some women, that has to be because there's no other choice for a while. So I'm not, demonizing that someone will be like, oh, well, it's what I have to do. I just realized I didn't want it for me.
It makes us feel a certain way.
It does. It made me feel a certain way. And I said, because I remember trying to reach to him, and he did this to the nanny. I was like, no. It's okay. We're going to work on this.
You didn't run into the kitchen and cry? Or?
No, I don't cry. I was telling, where's Ayuma? She's gone. I was telling all my fellow panelists, I don't cry. But this place has broken me. No, I'm working on being able to be more emotional. I'm very good at putting up a defense when it comes to speaking about feelings. If you want to talk about equality and the quest for menstrual equality and everything, I can talk. When you say, tell me how you feel.
But why did you pick, so you're talking about menstrual equality, you're advocating for that.
Yeah.
You're advocating for women's rights.
Yes.
Isn't that from a point of feeling? Like, where does it...
It's from a point of anger, which is a feeling.
Okay.
Oh God, I feel like this is going to be a therapy session.
No, it's not. It's not.
You sneaked me into this. It is. It's a point of frustration, anger, and also knowing that I want to use my platform to be able to amplify some of these issues. Mm-hmm. And I think, for me, that's why the pregnancy insults, if it's bigger than me, I can speak about it all day. Menstrual inequality is way bigger than me.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Motherhood penalty, I found out it's actually something.
Yes.
Is bigger than me.
And it's global.
And it's global. So that I get so angered by that I'm like, no, we need to have conversations and figure out what the policy is and what happens. Me talking about my feelings?
Okay, Janet.
Not so much. No, it's okay, we can try.
I will not probe. But so in the workplace, what worked for you was speaking to not your immediate boss, who was the guilty party, so to speak, but going above his head. Which is also, it can be a bit it can be tricky, but it was delicately so. I didn't go there and I was like, I just I brought facts on the table. Okay. And I'm like, fact is, that is harassment. Mm-hmm. If you speak about, if you speak in this tone and say A, B, C, D, that's bullying, that's harassment, that's something that should get him penalized. Right. And so it was factual. If you discriminate for biology, then that's a problem. Yes. But the other thing, I think I've always been quietly aggressive. So I would also, in terms of how I stayed, and it's not to say I won't go back, I probably will go back. Yes, we miss you, Janet. At some point. But just that push for, who are you to stop me? I know I'm capable. I know I can bring forth my talent. And so that's what I think was even able to bring me into this field that was very largely male-dominated. But speaking, yes, bringing facts on the table, and just trying to figure out a way that it can be sorted so that somebody behind me, I know eventually they left. And I think there was a lot of people that had an issue with this person. Okay. So I'm glad, whether or not they were pushed out or decided the heat was too much, I know that something sat. But I believe they're
probably still within the media
Is
field.
there something, so we've seen, you're doing Inroad Odyssey, maybe you can tell people what that's about.
Briefly, it's a foundation that really looks at ending menstrual inequality and seeking out, addressing issues around adolescent health. But the inroad was because of menstrual inequality, which is still such a huge issue, which doesn't make any sense because it's not anything we have any control over, but yet you have a lot of girls and women who don't have access to products. It's disrupting lives, it's disrupting education. And so Inroad Odyssey seeks to be that advocacy platform that is able to create awareness around girls and women having access to menstrual products.
So what can we do? How do we participate?
To be announced very soon. There is something that we're putting together.
You were giving away pads, or have you now changed direction?
To advocacy, because giving away pads is great. It's band-aid because you can only do it for so long.
Right.
You know, and I think women and girls need to be given options like choices, period choices, a cup, you know, a reusable towel, a disposable pad. So you can give out pads, but it's not sustainable. What needs to happen is that at the policy level, so the Basic Education Act talks about free sanitary pads, but the implementation and the policy is so, there isn't any clarity in terms of how it can be done, how the girls and women can access. If you look at in prisons, if you look at different situations. The other day I went to Kibera a few days ago and was speaking to women there about their own challenges with the access, and they're major. So there is something missing. There's a loophole in terms of accessing the product. So that's the advocacy that we're working towards this year. So we'll be able to share that later this year.
Okay. What else are you working on? I want to give you an idea. Go on. What else?
Oh, okay. Maybe give me the idea, then I'll tell you what I'm working on.
I think a hostile workplace, like what you experienced, and I'm sure many of us have experienced it at different levels, has such a negative effect overall on the entire economy. If women are not okay in the workplace, we pay less, we earn less, we pay less taxes, we're just not as economically we're not participating at the same economic capacity as a man. And it's not that we've refused to, it's that the environment is hostile. So I think, because you're already talking about this,
yes, Valentine,
this can be your thing, like hostile, because like you mentioned, figures and facts, and there's research that backs this up. If we have 50% women in the world and in Kenya, and we're not working at full capacity, then Kenya is frankly incapacitated.
No, you're 100% right. And I know it's something I talked about in an interview recently on the gender pay gap. It was about the wage gap in particular. But I hear you. Definitely more needs to be done about the toxic workspace. I would have interns just like break down, because it's from the moment you enter the door. It's almost like monolozing. How much can she take? So let me try, you know, make a pass at her. And if she can survive that, there's still somebody waiting there to be even more aggressive about how they're talking to you. Until you're trying to get your story on air, you're the one delivering it. So by the time you're there, you're just mentally exhausted. So you're right. And I can only speak from that workspace. And I'm not saying it's not changing.
I'll back you up. Let's do this.
Oh, okay. But no, a lot more needs to be done to allow women to have a safe space where they feel like they've been heard. Because a lot of women have told me they still felt let down by their HR. One of them, who I know very well, said she couldn't believe when the HR director sided with, you know, with the team.
And frequently, we don't know we're being harassed.
Yeah, that's
true. We don't fully understand the mechanics of harassment. But you walking into a space and someone looks at you and says, umebeba. By the time you've heard that 10 times, and then in a month you've heard it 30 times, you live with like a low-key level of anger. So then when women blow up in the workplace, it's like, oh, they're emotional.
They're on their period.
But what are we, exactly.
I'm sure a lot of us have gotten that. I know I have. So I think a lot of women feel a little nervous because it could affect how you're then treated or you're sidelined. But like I keep saying, in order for you to make progress, or in order for there to be progress in terms of a workspace that allows women to thrive, there will be some persecution that comes with it. But you would rather withstand that because eventually somebody will listen. I know workspaces that have shifted because women have spoken out. They've been more accommodating because women have spoken out. And so it can happen. It's just, I know that nerve-wracking. Oh, no, I'm new here. I'm so small. I'm so young. I don't want to say anything.
I don't want to be the abrasive.
Yeah, but then you leave there and you're empty. You're like, why didn't I say anything? And then you're frustrated and angry all the time. We have to learn to speak out, even if our voices shake. It's okay. Let's speak. and find a way to collectively come together, rally,
I like that.
and speak out.
Even if our voices shake.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite quotes. Speak even if your voice shakes.
Okay.
At least you're speaking.
So what's next for Janet? We're back to the feelings.
I know. No, there's so many exciting things I'm working on this year. So many. I'll be so happy to share them in a couple of months. For now, I do work with
Dada Sphere Spotlight.
I know. I'm like, I'm still the brand ambassador for Help a Child Reach 5 with Lifeboy. I do work with The Hive, a campaign called Better for Kenya that seeks to amplify gender equality messaging.
I've seen that.
Yes, it's they're grantees of the Gates Foundation. So also working with them has been incredibly eye-opening and exciting.
Okay.
So and in Nuadada, there's tons that we'll be sharing soon. So I'm really excited about that. A lot of advocacy, I would say.
Okay.
That's the space that I'm passionate about being in.
Okay, last question. What's the needle where do you want the needle to go? From where to where?
That's a good question.
Like you'll be like, I'm succeeding because this is happening.
I think if we see, we have all this fantastic policies and paperwork, and sometimes you don't really see it being reflected. But I think for me, the excitement would be not just me, but a lot of public participation in making sure that it moves from what's written to what's actually being implemented
on the ground,
whether it comes to education, when it comes to the pay, comes to representation. For me, that's what I want to see, because then it will be actual results. So I'd love to be a part of that movement, and I think it's already a movement, whether or not that's a label. This conversation, the conversations, it is part of the move to have the results. And not just you've signed, it's great that you've signed, but we're still seeing loopholes, for example, in the brilliantly written Sexual Offences Act. And we need to see, we just need more implementation and results. That's the only way we can thrive. Otherwise, how? Okay. You know? Just very quickly before I finish, another example is yesterday I was speaking to a group of women who were telling me, they were talking about forceful eviction. So you're going to a slum area and there's a road being built through. And some of them were saying, yeah, you wake up at 2 a.m. and it's a bulldozer looking you in the face. And one of them was talking about that happening when she had her 5-day-old in her hands. And I was just, yes, we hear about it and we see it in the news, but it broke me. So I asked, first I was like, why? But they say, but that's something they've gotten away with. They evict us forcefully. I said, there's a solution. I'm like, talk to us. Give us, warn us. Don't show up at 2 a.m. with a bulldozer. I'm not going to sit there and let you bulldoze me and my child. But also give us some kind of alternative in advance. She was like, that's all we ask for, bare minimum. And so that's, again, such an injustice that's still going on. One of the ladies there was speaking, saying, I know I'm in trouble saying this, but this is, she was talking about what's happened in her part of where she lives, etc. And she's like, yeah, I'll already probably be a target because I'm speaking out. But if we don't rally as women and go to that court and we filed cases. People think just because we're from informal settlements, we don't know our rights. We do. But I think if we're more and we rally and we make enough noise and we come together, something can shift. So it goes back to the needle being pushed. I feel like that's the only way.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you, everyone.
And you did talk about your feelings.
I didn't talk about my feelings.
A little bit.
Next Dada Sphere, I will talk about my feelings.
When I
join these amazing... like how after Kina Pinky and Mugure and Monty, I dare come and talk about odd feelings.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Valentine.